Thank you, Maxim. Thank you, Maxim. I've learned so much from you. I really have no business to be here at a film festival, although I founded a film festival. I'm a Canadian. To tell you a little bit about myself, I grew up on a farm outside Toronto, a general dairy farm, 100 acres, cows, pigs, chickens, wheat, corn, and all that. And my parents were Amish, the horse and buggy people. I was always told never, ever to go to the movie theater because the devil lived there. And I had no idea what happened into a movie theater. I was 16 years old on the farm. It was a hot summer's day, a bit like today, harvest season. Our part broke down, and I'm the kid. I get sent to the local village just outside Toronto to the blacksmith to get this repair done. And when I found out it was going to take 3 long hours to do the repair, you see, it wasn't really worth me going all the way back home, turning around and coming back. I had a few coins in my pocket. I was 16 years old. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was wondering what the devil looked like. And there it was, 3 doors down from the house of the Lord, the house of the devil. I walked up, and back in those days, they only charged 99 cents to see what the devil looked like. I paid my money, walked down this tunnel into a big room. Bit like church, bit like this, you know. Chairs lined up facing the front. I sit down. It's about 2 o'clock. A couple other people that hot summer's day. They turned the flippin' lights off. The curtain slowly opened. And the first face of the devil I saw at the most tender age of 16 was Lassie Comes Home. And I cried like a baby. And at the end, I rushed up to see if I could feel that I was all gone in a twinkling of an eye. And I was totally besotted with this, and I couldn't tell anybody when I got back home. The topic of the creativity conference, I don't think anyone is, I think everyone is creative and artistic, but I think the difference between the big artists and the ones who are not are the people who actually do it. You know, so I got a great idea for a movie and it sits in your head. By the way, I think great ideas for any artistic endeavor that are not manifested in a screenplay or a drawing or a choreograph or a dance, I think those ideas stuck in your head, I think that's one of the leading causes of cancer. And I think if you do that, you should really get daily checkups with your local doctor to make sure that. Anyway, I moved to London after 16. About a year or two later, high school was finished outside Toronto, and I made a decision that made my mother weep. I went to art school. I went to a traditional art school in downtown Toronto, where for 3 years I studied not reading, writing, arithmetic, but drawing, painting, and sculpture. And my sculpture tutor was a guy who used to be a technician for one of the great artists of this country, equal to Picasso, Sir Henry Moore. I worked with the guy that made all those sculptures. And when I graduated, I first came to London in the early 1970s, and because of Wyn Lawrence was his name, a Welshman who had moved to Toronto after the war, I got a gig for about 9 months working for Sir Henry Moore at his studios out in Hertfordshire. And you get there in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, you put on your overalls in the enlargement studios. My job was chipping the plaster off the casts. And then every morning at 9 o'clock, Sir Henry himself, my idol, would come walking up the path from the simple farmhouse he shared for his entire life with Martha, his wife. And he had on white shirt, red bow tie, and a blue apron. And he would work until about 11. I was fascinated. This guy came out at the same time like clockwork every day and did the same thing every day. And every day at 11 o'clock, he'd go back into the house for an hour or two. And then he'd come back. And one day, about 11:15, I get sent into the house for a message, something important. And I go to the house. And I'm so nervous because I'm about to enter the domestic residence of my childhood hero. And there he was sitting at a table, having what I think you British people quaintly call tea. Now, where I'm from in Canada, tea is a liquid, but over here, apparently it's food, ham and eggs, right? And he was eating, and on a shelf above his desk were all these little bits of bones and shells he had found. You see, there was an abattoir next farm over and a stream, and I'd often see him picking, reaching stuff and put it in his pocket, going, and there they all was in this little shelf. The man, creator of monumental sculptures, why could you be interested in this pebble or this bit of bone? And he was sketching them. He had a big moleskin like this, a big A3 moleskin. And he was sketching these. And he was doing hundreds of little drawings. And I said to him, oh, Sir Henry Moore, my hero, in words like this, I said, why are you, of all people, creator of monumental sculptures in stone and wood and bronze, why are you sketching these humble little bits of bone and stone? And he said to me, I am building up my library of shapes. And what he would do, apparently, is he would fill these big A3 books. You can see these at the Tate Modern. And then he would pick one or two that he really liked, and he'd do a full page drawing. And when he'd done about 100 of those, he would go and get the wax and do the little wax maquette like that. And when he did about 100 of those, he would double one up using a doubling machine, right? And when he was done 10 or 15 of those, one of those would become the big sculpture you see outside the Hammersmith Hospital or in Hyde Park or in any other major city in the world. And when he died in, was it 94, 84, I forget, did you know that he was making after tax? Remember the then Labour government, 90% tax, he was still making £4 million a year. He was persistent and he was methodical. He did not view himself as an artist. When he went to the Royal College of Art here, to graduate, you needed to carve a round, marble, like thick piece of stone and copy one of the Greek whatever from the temples. And you use what's called a pointing machine where you've got two arms, and if you go down an inch here or 1/10 of an inch there and chip, 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 you could actually copy it. Well, he actually did it without using with the pointing machine, and he knew he would fail because he did not use the pointing machine. So he made this beautiful 100% copy and then took the chisel and put little pings in it to make it look like the pointing machine had hit the surface of the marble. That's skill, isn't it? Yeah? So back to creativity. Why did I start Raindance? I'd gone bust in real estate over here. I'd lost everything. And at that time, I was living in a National Trust property just outside London, and 50 acres, with the house and the gardens we looked after. Meanwhile, Farmer Fred, who had the surrounding 50 acres with all the sheep, he saw me moping around feeling sorry for myself for a whole year. And one day he called me on it. And he said, you know what, Elliot? As long as you're feeling sorry for yourself, there's not a single doctor in the world that can help you. And I said, you know what, you're right. What should I do? And he said, do what you love. That's when I remembered the first time I saw Lassie Comes Home, the movie. And I think doing what you love means that you can conquer anything in any of the arts or any pathway you may have in life. Doing what you love is really key. I'll tell you one last story before I turn the mic back to Max and whoever's next. So I'm back on the farm, I'm a kid. I'm maybe 6, 7 years old. It's March, the snow's melting. And my grandfather took me by the hand to walk back to the lane, back to the woodlot at the back. We had sugar maple, where we had made maple syrup every spring. And he only had one arm. He'd lost one arm in a farming accident before I was born. My granddad, Russell. And we're walking down there. All of a sudden, he licks his finger and holds it in the air like this. It's March. The snow's not quite melted yet. I said, Granddad, what are you doing? He said, I'm seeing which way the wind is blowing. Why would you want to do that? I said. He said, well, you know what? My granddad taught me, and his dad before him, that in March, if you lick your finger, you know which way the wind is blowing, whether it's going to be a hot summer or a mild summer, a dry summer or a wet summer. I said, why is that important? He said, well, when it's a wet summer, you plant oats. If it's a dry summer, you plant wheat. And if it's kind of in between, you plant corn in that field over there. I said, why is that important? He said, if I make a mistake and put the wrong seeds in the wrong field, son, grandson, you're going to go hungry. Now think about that for a minute. Do we not live in crazy times? AI and all that stuff. Which one of you can lick your finger and put it in the wind to feel which way the wind is blowing, to inform yourself and hopefully share with everyone else where you think everything is going to go, so that when we put all of our effort into nourishing the seeds that we and each other plant, that you will have not famine, but a bountiful harvest. And if those of you who are screenwriters want to know anything about what you should do, we live in really troubled times, do we not? Did you know that this is nothing new? Thousands of years ago, we had pandemics. We had the lesions of Job. We had climate change, Noah and the ark. We had refugees crises, the Israelites cast out of Egypt. But what we had back then were people who could tell stories, the topic of the story conference, be it written or visual, people who could tell stories to inform their locals of the time how to deal with all of this. Did they not? And some of these stories were so profound and so universal, we still know them today as parables, and those ancient storytellers we know as prophets. So I think the reason Maxim does this wonderful conference is to find out which of us, you, are the storytellers of today, that explain to me, a farm boy from outside Toronto, how the hell to process all this crazy change with your stories, your visual stories, right? And maybe doing that, your grandchildren will recognize you as a prophet with the parables that you weave with your films and novels and so on today. I think that's about it.